Picture this. You're a researcher. In front of you, a burial site 100,000 years old. In the grave, a child, 12 or 13 years old. The body placed in a fetal position, arms folded across the chest. And resting across those arms, the enormous branching antlers of a fallow deer, deliberately removed from the animal's skull and placed exactly here. Beside the body, red ochre, a pigment that doesn't occur naturally in this part of the cave. Someone brought it specifically. This is Qafzeh Cave, Israel, 100,000 years before the Common Era. There is no practical reason to bury a child this way. No explanation that appeals only to survival or convenience exists. The only explanation is symbolic, ritual, religious. This isn't the beginning of religion. It's simply the earliest physical evidence we've found.
The real origins go deeper, into a past that left no traces, because wood, language, and most organic material don't survive hundreds of thousands of years. But the question remains, how did religion begin? Why is the human being the only species that buries its dead with offerings, builds temples, and believes in gods? Religion wasn't invented. It grew from something already inside us. For a long time, the answer seemed obvious. Early humans saw lightning and were afraid. They didn't understand where disease came from. They didn't know why people died. Religion, by this account, was an answer to ignorance, the supernatural filling in for the unknown. Fear thunder, invent a thunder god. Fear death, invent an afterlife. Fear hunger, invent a hunting ritual. The problem with this explanation is that it doesn't answer the most important question. Why is religion universal? There is not a single known human society, not one, however isolated, that lacks religious beliefs. Religion exists among all peoples, in all climates, across every historical era. If religion is simply an answer to ignorance, why doesn't it disappear as knowledge grows? Why do educated people in modern societies remain religious? Why do children, without any instruction, spontaneously generate concepts of supernatural beings? This points to something deeper than ignorance, something biological. Religion isn't an answer to ignorance. It's a survival technology. Robin Dunbar of Oxford University, an evolutionary psychologist best known for Dunbar's number, humans can maintain stable social relationships with roughly 150 people at once, and no more. This limit is built into the size of our brains. Dunbar proposed a radically different explanation for religion. Not fear, not ignorance, social cohesion. His argument? When human groups began to exceed 150 people, the traditional mechanisms of solidarity, personal acquaintance, mutual obligation, reputation, stopped being sufficient. A new tool was needed to hold larger groups together. Religion became that tool. Shared ritual, singing, dancing, prayer, fasting, triggers the release of endorphins. The same endorphins released through physical contact, grooming, and laughter. Endorphins create feelings of unity and trust. This isn't metaphor, it's neurochemistry. A group bound by shared ritual became more cohesive. Its members were willing to cooperate with strangers because a stranger performing the same ritual became one of us. In conditions where survival depended on the scale of cooperation, this was an enormous advantage. But what did the first religion actually look like? Not the religion we know today with its gods and texts and institutions. The very first, before all of that. The first religion had no gods. It had ritual. Dunbar distinguishes between two types of religion. The first is immersive. No formal structures, no texts, no priesthood. Only ritual, singing, dancing, altered states of consciousness. This is the religion practiced by most contemporary hunter-gatherers, the Hadza, the Bayaka, Aboriginal Australians. Shamanism in its original form. This is not a primitive religion. It is religion in its earliest form. It existed long before any gods or dogmas because it needed no words, only the body, movement, and shared experience.
The second type is doctrinal. Formal rituals, written texts, priestly hierarchies, fixed dogmas. This type emerged with the growth of cities and complex societies because a religion was needed that could unite thousands and millions of people who would never meet in person. Islam, Christianity, Buddhism, Hinduism, these are all doctrinal religions of the second type. They appeared very late in historical terms, but their roots run back to the immersive ritual that was there from the beginning. The shaman isn't a priest. The shaman is the oldest profession in history. The earliest traces of organized religious practice are traces of shamanism. The Cave of the Three Brothers in France. Around 15,000 years ago, approximately 13,000 BCE. On the wall, an image of a being with stag antlers, a beard, and a horse's tail, in a movement that resembles dancing. This is the figure known as the sorcerer. One of the most widely discussed interpretations is that it depicts a shaman performing a ritual. Similar images, human figures with animal features, figures in trance postures, appear in caves worldwide. In South Africa, Australia, Siberia. This is not coincidence. It is a pattern. The shaman is a mediator between the human and non-human worlds. In hunter-gatherer societies, the shaman performs multiple roles simultaneously: healer, predictor, knowledge keeper, ritual organizer, psychological anchor for the group. Crucially, the shaman deliberately enters altered states of consciousness through fasting, rhythmic dance, psychoactive plants, sensory deprivation, and in these states perceives what they later describe as encounters with spirits or gods. Neuroscience explains this. Specific patterns of neural activity produce experiences indistinguishable from the mystical. A sense of unity with the world, the presence of a higher being, transcendence of the self. This is not deception. It is a genuine neurological experience. The only question is interpretation. Now let's turn to the most mysterious place in the history of religion. A hillside in Turkey that overturned everything we thought we knew about the relationship between religion and civilization. The temple was built before the village. That should be impossible, but it's a fact. Göbekli Tepe, southeastern Turkey, near the modern city of Şanlıurfa. 1994. German archaeologist Klaus Schmidt begins excavating a hill that local farmers had long considered simply inconvenient terrain. What he found overturned our understanding of early human history. Monumental stone pillars up to 6 meters tall and weighing up to 10 tons. T-shaped, covered in carved reliefs, foxes, boars, snakes, birds of prey, spiders, arranged in circular enclosures. The earliest layers date to approximately 9,600 BCE. That is 6,000 years older than Stonehenge. But the age isn't the point. The point is, who built it? Hunter-gatherers, people without pottery, without metal tools, without permanent settlements in this area. People who, according to every prior theory, should not have been capable of this. Before Göbekli Tepe, the assumed sequence was clear. Agriculture first, then settlements, then social organization, then religion and monumental construction. Göbekli Tepe dismantled that sequence. This religious complex was built before agriculture existed in the region. Klaus Schmidt drew a radical conclusion. Civilization did not give birth to religion. Religion gave birth to civilization. Agriculture didn't create religion. Religion may have created agriculture. The logic runs as follows. Building Göbekli Tepe required enormous resources, hundreds, possibly thousands of workers who all needed to be fed, which requires grain reserves. But where did the organizational capacity to assemble thousands of people even come from? Hunter-gatherers lived in mobile bands of 30 to 50. How did they coordinate at that scale? Schmidt's answer, religious ritual was the coordination mechanism. Periodic gatherings at a sacred site, perhaps annual or seasonal, created social structures beyond a single clan. Göbekli Tepe may have been a pilgrimage site. Different groups converged here, exchanged information, formed alliances, held communal feasts. Tens of thousands of animal bones found at the site confirm this. People ate here, a lot, together. And here is a striking fact. The wild ancestor of domesticated einkorn wheat has been genetically traced to the Qafzeh Mountains, approximately 30 kilometers from Göbekli Tepe. This may not be a coincidence. The need to feed the builders of a ritual complex may have been the stimulus for the first deliberate cultivation of grain. If so, the religious impulse, the need for ritual, for shared sacred space, preceded agriculture and may have caused it, not the other way around. This isn't proven definitively. Scholars continue to debate whether Göbekli Tepe was exclusively a ritual site or had permanent occupation. Alternative interpretations have been proposed. But the existence of a monumental structure built by pre-agricultural hunter-gatherers is undeniable, and it demands an explanation. Religion solved a problem that couldn't be solved any other way. Picture a hunter-gatherer band of 150 people. Everyone knows everyone personally. Reputation functions. A person who breaks an agreement will be punished by social exclusion. The system holds because of mutual knowledge. Now picture the group growing to 1,000 people, or 10,000. In a group that large, most people don't know each other personally. Reputational control stops working. How do you convince a stranger not to cheat you? How do you organize the collective labor of people who have never met? One answer is the state, with its laws and punishments. But states appeared late. Before the state, there was another mechanism: belief in a watching and punishing God. If every member of the group believes that a higher being can see their actions and will punish deception, that creates a behavioral incentive to act honestly, even when no human is watching. Economists call this solving the free rider problem, the situation where it's in an individual's interest to take the benefits of collective effort without contributing. A God watcher makes that kind of cheating risky. This is exactly what cross-cultural psychology research shows. Societies with moralizing gods, deities who monitor the moral behavior of humans, demonstrate higher levels of cooperation between strangers. This finding is developed in the work of Ara Norenzayan of the University of British Columbia, particularly in his book Big Gods, 2013. An important clarification: Norenzayan does not argue that religion was deliberately invented to solve this problem. Rather, groups whose beliefs happened to solve it prospered more, and their beliefs spread with them. This is cultural natural selection. Religion as a system of oversight and obligation allowed humanity to scale from small tribes to large societies. Big gods appeared alongside big societies. This is one of the most overlooked turns in the history of religion. The earliest religions, shamanism, animism, totemism of hunter-gatherers, didn't feature all-powerful moralizing gods. Nature spirits, ancestors, totem animals, these beings were not particularly interested in whether a person was honest in transactions with their neighbors. They were forces to be appeased, outwitted, or won over. Their moral dimension was weak or entirely absent. The gods of traditional hunter-gatherers are primarily masters of animals and spirits of places. They're connected to hunting, to specific landscapes, to particular territories. Their power is local and specific. The omnipotent, omniscient, morally concerned God is a later invention. It appears where and when societies become large enough that personal control stops working. Norenzayan and his colleagues analyzed a wide cross-cultural data set of traditional societies and found a consistent correlation. The larger the society, the more likely its gods are to be morally concerned with human behavior. Gods grow with the societies that imagine them. Or, seen from the other direction, societies that invented moralizing gods gained an adaptive advantage. They could cooperate at larger scale, and therefore survived and spread more effectively. But religion is not only gods and rituals. It is also an answer to the most personal question of all. Religion gave humanity something nothing else could: an answer to death. Qafzeh Cave. We've come back to the beginning. A child, 12 or 13 years old, deer antlers, red ochre. Why? Why did these people 100,000 years ago do this? One explanation, because they were already asking the question, what happens after death? And they already had an answer, unformulated perhaps, transmitted only through action. The antlers are not placed randomly. This is a gesture of direction, perhaps toward another world. The ochre, the color of blood, the color of life, perhaps an attempt to preserve life or transfer it to wherever the dead go. This is not logic. This is not science. It is something else, the need to find meaning where meaning appears to be absent. A biologist would say that the death of an individual requires no explanation. It simply happens. But the human brain is built differently. It looks for intention and cause everywhere. This is called teleological thinking, seeing purpose and design even where there is none. It is precisely this thinking that generates religious concepts. If everything around us has a cause, then death has a cause. And if I am conscious now, perhaps consciousness persists. So, how did religion begin? Not at a single moment, and not from a single cause. 4 components working together. Biological. The brain sees intention everywhere. Side effect? Invisible presences, supernatural explanations for natural events. Social. Shared ritual bonds people through endorphins. Groups with ritual practice were more cohesive, more competitive. Coordinational. Belief in a watching God scaled cooperation beyond personal acquaintance, making Göbekli Tepe possible, and then cities and civilizations. Existential. Religion answered questions that had no other answers. Why live? What comes after death? Is there meaning in suffering? No single cause is sufficient alone. Together, they explain why religion is universal, why it appeared so early, and why it hasn't gone away. In Qafzeh cave 100,000 years ago, someone placed deer antlers on the body of a child. We don't know what that person believed. We don't know what they called what they felt. But we know that there was no practical reason to do this, and it was done anyway. That is the essence of religion. Not gods, not temples. The gesture that exceeds necessity. The action whose meaning is visible only to the person performing it. This is what makes us human. This is what we have been doing for 100,000 years. If you want to understand what religion is in its most original and undiluted form, you don't need theological texts. You need to picture that person in the cave. Darkness. The child's body before them. The antlers in their hands. They do something that serves no practical purpose, but they cannot not do it. That is the beginning. But there's one more aspect of religion that cannot be left out. It's not about social function, not about neuroscience. It's about experience. Because for billions of people, religion is not a theory or a tool. It is something felt. Mystical experience isn't metaphor. It's a neurological fact. Research on people who have had mystical experiences, the sense of unity with the world, of a higher presence, of the dissolution of the boundary between self and universe, reveals several consistent features. First, they are universal. Mystical experiences are described in nearly identical terms by people from different cultures, different religions, different eras. A Buddhist monk, a Christian mystic, an Amazonian shaman, and a participant in a psilocybin study at Johns Hopkins describe remarkably similar states. Second, they are neurologically real. Functional MRI shows that during these experiences, specific brain regions activate, most notably the default mode network, which maintains our sense of being a separate self, goes quiet. When that network falls silent, the boundary between self and not self dissolves. This is what is experienced as unity with the world. Third, they have measurable long-term effects. People who have undergone deep mystical experiences typically report reduced fear of death, increased prosocial behavior, and a shift in life priorities toward meaning rather than material gain. This is not a matter of faith. These are measurable psychological and neurological changes. What does this mean for understanding religion? Possibly this. Religion wasn't designed from above and handed down. It emerged from below, from real human experience that people lived through and tried to describe. The shaman who entered a trance during a ritual and saw spirits was not lying. They were describing a genuine neurological experience. The earliest religions were attempts to systematize and transmit that experience to others. Later, with the growth of complex societies, religion acquired institutional forms. Priests, texts, dogmas, temples appeared. The personal experience became mediated through clergy, through ritual, through text. But at the foundation of all of it, the same original experience. The same one a human being had in a cave 100,000 years ago, placing deer antlers on the body of a child. Religion has survived everything reason tried to put against it. Why? In the 19th and 20th centuries, religion was repeatedly declared to be dying. Science will explain everything, and religion will disappear. This was positivism. Religion is the opium of the people, an instrument of oppression. This was Marxism. In the USSR, in revolutionary China, in Pol Pot's Cambodia, religion was actively and forcibly eradicated. The result was the same everywhere. It came back. Contemporary data does not support the thesis that religion is fading inevitably. According to Pew Research, by 2050, the share of religious people in the world will be growing, not falling, driven primarily by demographic growth in Africa and Asia. Why is religion so resilient? Dunbar's answer? Because it meets needs that haven't gone away. The need for belonging, the need for meaning, the need for experience that transcends the ordinary, the need for an answer to the question of death. Psychological research cited by Dunbar in his book How Religion Evolved, Oxford University Press, 2022, shows religious people are, on average, happier, less afraid of death, and more resilient under difficult circumstances. This doesn't mean religion is true. It means it works, in the way any effective adaptation works. Science explains how the world is built. Religion answers the question of why it's worth living in. These are different questions, and as long as humans ask both, religion will have its place. In Qafzeh Cave, 100,000 years ago, all of this was already present. Biology, social function, coordination, existential need, all of it in one gesture. The gesture of a person that served no practical purpose, but was necessary for the child who had died or for the living who remained. We still don't know what that person believed, but we know they believed. Because people who don't believe don't bury the dead like this.